that's the housekeeping. Let's get into the Nintendo pipeline, unclog it, take the plunger, stick it in the pipeline, and get some of this news out here. Starting first and foremost with Nintendo's direction and the Nintendo NX.
Indeed. This week, we start out with a bit more controversy. The past couple weeks, it was the only Zelda at E3 news that we got, and no NX. That they're not going to be showing the NX, and we're going to be going straight into the Nintendo Treehouse.
Mm-hmm.
Reggie's going to be introducing us into that at E3. So really, no other games coverage besides Zelda, and no NX. So now they've come out with more news that many find upsetting. However, I think that we should note that people find this everybody wants Nintendo to stop innovating. They want another PlayStation. They want them to basically do their own PlayStation 4
less
or
gimmicks.
Xbox.
No more gimmicks.
No more gimmicks. After the Wii and how that kind of faded out, they're like, all right, we're done with the motion gimmicks,
Mm-hmm.
the Kinect, everything. Just stop it. Let's just have games. So we have some controversial stories. Nintendo have outlined the company's new purpose. They are looking to branch out into medical and health services, computer software, eating establishments, and IP licensing.
Nice.
Not only that, but they have reiterated that the NX is a new way of playing games, and Kimishima has advised yet again that the NX will not be a successor to the Wii U. So what does this mean? Will the NX actually be a health and fitness console? That's a possibility. We could talk about what if it's absolutely nothing like people are predicting.
Yeah, that's usually what it is with Nintendo.
But Emily Rogers, all of her rumors, and she seems like a pretty credible source. So
yeah, some things to note here that you have in the notes. We'll probably hear more about all of this at the Nintendo shareholders meeting, which is June 29th.
Right.
We had that kind of a few years ago where Nintendo did really nothing at E3, but then a few weeks later, in preparation for their shareholder meeting, they're like, oh, by the way, here's a million trailers for these new games that we have. It's also noting that that Nintendo has that motto, there's no play like it.
Yeah.
And that the NX is a new way of playing games. And then some of the 10K rumors that we've talked about include, the same old as cartridges being the media format, kind of remote play, the screen and the controller. Some other stuff that we won't get completely into with his rumor, because at that point we're just kind of, either beating a dead horse or just shooting just whatever expression would be for just being relatively pointless to talk about the rumors of 10K and even Emily Rogers to a point where even though she's pretty credible, it's just at the end of the day,
right?
What is it now? Some things to note here, though. Matt, maybe you can touch on this more as a game developer and as a game designer. With just the whole concept of using gimmicks and all of that. I like the motto, there's no play like it, and I like the concept of Nintendo being unique. If they are another PlayStation, if they are another Xbox, if they're another just kind of home TV PC, then you kind of have the problem. It's well, then why even get that? If you already have a PlayStation, I guess for as a Mario box, as a Zelda box, it's nice in that way. Just people argue that PlayStation is just kind of nothing different except for you have Uncharted on that. But do you see, and be free to comment with everything you can, but do you see it better for Nintendo to go into a more innovative gimmicky direction, or should they conform to what everyone else does and just make it a PC that is with Mario? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. First, congrats on the subscribers, man. It's good to hear that the podcast is getting some traction.
Yeah,
I can relate to starting new things and having to get that traction. So congrats. So my game design tenure started on the Game Boy Advance, and then we got into the DS, which at the time was kind of a new thing. And 2 screens, well, it feels like kind of a gimmick. But there's been some really great games that have come from having 2 screens and having a touch screen and being able to write things down. Hotel Dusk comes to mind. I don't know if you guys ever played that one.
No.
Cool story game where you can write notes and solve puzzles and things using the touchscreen. But a lot of people could have looked at the GBA and then the DS and said, "Oh, it's just a gimmick. They're just adding a screen, and it's not useful." And then we moved from the 3DS or from the DS to the Wii, and we were actually, my team was part of an early kind of, I guess, kind of an early access type of team where we got a sneak peek at the technology. And even though the idea of kind of a motion controller had been kind of dabbled on in the past, it was still a new way to play. So as a game designer myself, with 50 plus games under my belt, it's nice as a game designer to have a company like Nintendo that is exploring different ways to connect to a game experience.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate their interest in trying new things. And not everyone has worked. I mean, there's some pretty public, not just with Nintendo, but with other companies, pretty public things that haven't quite turned out the way that they probably wanted them to. But even simple things. I remember when Rumble packs were introduced,
Yeah.
and I thought it was like, oh man, this is like kind of just a goofy thing, right? I think it was with Star Fox on the 64, maybe.
Yeah.
And and now everything's got force feedback, and it's I think the tricky thing about innovation is consumers might not always know what they want until they see it. And it takes a lot of risk and a lot of guts to try and do those new things. And Nintendo has been one of those companies that have gone out and tried to always broach new ground. So I think if anybody's gonna be able to pull it off, Nintendo's certainly got the resume for it.
Yeah, I think the big thing is, I mean, you have like innovation. I think that because you have like something like PlayStation VR, for example, which is a new way of playing games and innovation,
Sure.
and everyone for the most part seems to be embracing it because I think it's because they know what it is. Like they can embrace it and they can get behind
Sure.
it because it's like, oh, I know what's happening. And there's same people that are like, why can't we just play it with a controller with a TV? Like,
Sure.
there's the few people I think that aren't behind it or think it'll be just a fad like the Wiimote was.
Yeah.
But then you also, most people are like selling out the pre-orders, and I think maybe if the Nintendo NX or if Nintendo were like, here's what the gimmick will be, like if they just
Yeah.
confirmed like it's gonna be a screen in the controller, but here's how it's gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
Then people would be behind that innovation instead of the controversy. People being like, please don't change again, because right now they're
Yeah.
just assuming the worst because of like the lackluster success of like like the Wii U relative to the Wii and stuff. So they're like,
Sure.
I want to make sure this is going to be awesome right out of the gate. But I
Yeah.
mean, if they were saying like, if they were coming off the success of the Wii going straight into now we're going to do an even newer way to play, you feel like maybe like would be a little bit more like, all right, like let's get behind it and stuff. Like if you're going to be improving on things, let's go. But it's just kind of the rocky back and forth communication. So hopefully, I mean, I'm with you. I think Zach and I are both with you and would agree that innovation is definitely something to strive for, because it's when we get those new experiences like the Wii U touchpad or the gamepad, you can draw Mario levels. Like that's just insane. Like
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's so necessary to have the Wii U gamepad for a lot of Wii U games, especially now well into its life cycle. And hopefully, I mean, they can just get right out of the gate with the NX and be like, here's the new gimmick, here's the innovation, and
Sure.
here's immediately why it's important.
Yeah,
And so-
and it takes the developers too to realize that future. The early days of the DS were, it took a little while for developers to come up with ideas that would really fit the platform. For the Wii, same thing. I mean, it took a while to find some really cool and conventional things to integrate with the Wii remote. So I think you're going to see the same thing with any new platform if it introduces something that's not conventional. If it's not just a regular, button controller, man, it's going to take some time to daydream and imagine and kind of brainstorm what awesome things can be done with it.
And that's kind of maybe one of the unfortunate things, the detriment of the Wii U, is that a lot of developers maybe left after the Wii, or the third parties weren't there anymore. It wasn't just the launch wasn't as good, and so I don't think there was as many developers on there testing the waters with the gamepad as much.
You had like Zombie U and stuff. I think a big fault there was with Nintendo, because with the Wii you had Wii Sports right out of the gate, where it's like this is what you can do with the Wiimote. Like you can bowl, you can play baseball, you can golf, you can do tennis, you can do this, and then you had like the waggle controls and there's a lot of ways to kind of explain like this is everything the Wiimote can do. And then right out the gate with the Wii U, it was like, oh, you can touch it to make platforms and New Super Mario Bros. U, or you can have this person view this side of the screen and stuff, and there wasn't really anything like Super Mario Maker where it's like you really do need to draw. And I'm surprised because they, like you mentioned, Matt, like they did have experience with two screens with the DS. I'm surprised it took a while for ideas like the 2DS or the DS and the 3DS to come to the Wii U, because it seemed like for the longest time it was just really all about the off-TV screenplay, which a lot of developers were like, why am I going to try to cater to that when, I mean, it really is not going to do anything else. It's just going to cost extra development time and to do something like that. But yeah, I think that's going to be the big thing we talked about in, like, I think last week, that it's not a problem that Nintendo's going to be underpowered or have these gimmicks. It's that the biggest party is that, or problem is that they need to have the first party games out there to prove what the console can do. So then third party developers don't have necessarily enough of or as much of a dependency. And so
yeah no, it's tricky, man. The hardware development itself and the marketing is such a a high risk endeavor that I'm just fortunate that all I have to do is make the games for it. It's because there's so many different choices, right? Like even when it comes down to the naming, like, do we bring in the name Wii because it has such a great success tied to it? But if if you call it the Wii U, will people think that it's the same device? Like, will they think it's just the same as the Wii and not a completely new console?
Yeah, just an add-on, basically.
Yeah, and that kind of decision making, I'm just fortunate that I don't have to do it. It's so tricky, the hardware side and the marketing side. So we'll see what the NX happens to be.
I'm so excited to hear its name. I want to know its name so bad.
Yeah.
Although I'm getting so used to throw them up, the X.
Yeah, the X. Yeah.
Theme song.
It better have an X in there somewhere. It has to.
Yeah.
We'll see. It'll probably be called the Wii 3. It's just like, gotcha. Wii 3.
I still remember when the Wii name was announced and everybody just kind of flipped out.
What?
Yeah, exactly.
But we would like to play though was epic, and like the two Wiimotes being like the two. I don't know. I liked it, but I mean that's kind of maybe like what is it like where you like look back on something more fondly than you did at the time, like like with Wind Waker, everyone's like you didn't like Wind Waker when it came out.
I remember when I did see the Wii for the first time, I remember thinking it looked really slick, like the light up little bar.
Yeah.
And the disc coming out, and it was just like, whoa!
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it did look. I mean, and they're like holding it up. Reggie's pulling it out of his sock and stuff. Like, here's the Wii.
Yeah.